We are now into, good morning, everybody. We are now into part two of Amnesty by Nadine Gordimer. We reached the point where the antagonist or the male lover is sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. He is taken to Robben Island, and Robben Island is a maximum security prison. This is the place where most of the prisoners are taken, especially the hardcore criminals, and they are sentenced here. Generally, not many people escape. I don't think any very many people have escaped from here. So we have reached that particular area. We are on page 75 in the book, page 75, the first paragraph, second paragraph, we are starting. Then the trial was over and he got 6 years. He was sent to the island. This island is Robben Island. We all know about the island. Our leaders have been there for so long. It just looked like a cake of dung dropped by cattle. This also I have explained. So to me, I didn't know much about this. All I knew was that I used to color the sea as blue, and I thought that the Robben Island was something like, she compares it to a cake of dung, a piece of excretion put by a cow and dropped by cattle, floating in a pool of rainwater. So in a pool of rainwater, excretion floating. This is how she thought of as Robben Island. He was allowed one letter a month. It was my letter. So I'm on the third paragraph. He was allowed one letter a month. It was my letter because his parents didn't know how to write. I used to go to them where they worked on another farm to ask what message they wanted to send. The mother always cried and put her hands on her head and said nothing. And the old man who preached to us on the open in the veld, on the open field every Sunday, said, "Tell my son we are praying. God will make everything all right for him." Once he wrote back, "That's the trouble. Our people on the farms, they are told God will decide what's good for them, so that they won't find the force to do anything to change their lives." So you see, there is only one letter per month. And this one letter, the mother never wants to reply. The mother is always very sad. And so the mother doesn't reply. The mother just keeps crying. Now, because this lady is slightly educated, she is the person who is writing the letter, and she goes to another farm to talk to her parents, to this male's parents. And at that time, the mother is just crying. The mother is very sad about that, she cannot see her son. And at the same time, the father is more of a religious person. So he says, or he always says, don't worry, God will take care of you, and one day you will be free. And one of those replies, this male lover said, "This is the problem with all these people, with all you uneducated South Africans. You always think that only God will save you. God will save you. But it is not God who's going to save you. We are going to save you." I mean, so we find that this male antagonist, this male lover, is highly into politics or completely immersed in politics. After 2 years had passed, we, his parents and I, had saved up enough money to go to Cape Town to visit him. We went by train and slept on the floor at the station and asked the way next day to the ferry. People were kind. They all knew that if you wanted the ferry, it was because you had somebody of yours on the island. So after 2 years, they somehow wanted to visit the parents wanted to visit the son. And so what they did was, they went to Cape Town. They're going to Robben Island, and when they reached Cape Town, naturally they saved up some money to go over there, and they slept in the railway station. So they're poor people, so they did not have much money. But even then, they reached there, and when they reached there, they asked how to reach Robben Island. So they said you have to take the ferry. See, now this is the ferry. This is the old ferry. This is the type of ferry that you would transport them from Cape Town to Robben Island. And this is presently the new ferry. Now, naturally, now there are a lot of tourists going there to visit Robben Island. Now, if you can look at the permit, you see, this is a permit that they need. On the right side, you can see the permit. A permit is some sort of a letter from an authority for them to visit this. Now, you can see, I will just read that. I'll just read a little bit first, and then we will talk about that. And there it was. There was a sea. It was green and blue, climbing and falling, bursting white. A terrible wind was slapping in its way. It hit the island. But people like us, also waiting for the ferry, pointed to where the island must be, far out into the sea, that I never thought would be like it really was. I never thought that sea would be so huge. This is the first time that I am seeing the sea. This lady is seeing the sea. And they're all waiting in line to board the ferry. There were other boats and ships as big as buildings that go to other places all over the world, but the ferry is only for the island. It doesn't go anywhere else in the world, only to the island. We're talking about Robben Island. So everybody waiting there was waiting for the island, but there could be no mistake. We were not in the right place. We had sweets and biscuits, trousers, and a warm coat for him. A woman standing with us said we wouldn't be allowed to give him the clothes. So another woman was apparently going to visit another person in Robben Island. So she said, unfortunately, we won't be able to give any clothes or anything to them. And I wasn't wearing anymore the old beret pulled down on my head that the farm girls wear. I bought a relaxer cream for the man who comes around the farms selling things out of box of his bicycle. And my hair was combed under a flowered scarf that didn't box on his bicycle, and that didn't cover the gold rings in my ears. His mother had her blanket tied around her waist over her dress, a farm woman, but I looked just as good as any other girls there. When the ferry was ready to take us, we all stood pressed together and quiet like cattle, waiting to be let through a gate. So we are all waiting. My father and my mother, they're just like poor farmers. They bought a few things from whatever money they have saved. One man kept looking round with his chin moving up and down. He was counting. He must have been afraid there were too many to get on, and he didn't want to be left behind. We all moved up to the policeman in charge, and everyone ahead of us went into the boat. But when our turn came, he put out his hand for something. I didn't know what. We didn't have a permit. So now they are about to get into the ferry. There are so many people wanting to get into the ferry. And at that particular time, there is a person who says, who's pointing his hands and says, where is the permit? Now, this is the permit that you have to see. The permit is on the right side. The right side, you can see that it is, the first line is English. The second line is Afrikaans, their language. So, temporary permit for visitors to Robben Island. Then, the bearer. So, the name has to be there. Having completed indemnity form. So, there is a form that they have to fill. Is authorized to travel on the Robben Island Prisons ferry to and from Cape Town, and on the duty buses that connect with the ferries on the island from on so and so, from date so and so, until so there is a time. So these people, the people who have the permit, they are allowed to travel on the ferry and the buses that will transport them to this jail in Robben Island, by virtue of being the bona fide guest of, and the person who is the issued by the commanding officer, that the bearer has been informed that he or she will be required to identify herself to the coxswain of the ferry and to the orderly of the duty bus. So They have to identify themselves to the people, and that is why this person asked for the form. But unfortunately, page 76, we didn't have a permit. Unfortunately, they did not have a permit. We didn't know that before you came to Cape Town, before you came to the ferry for the island, you have to have a police permit to visit a prisoner on the island. I tried to ask him nicely. The wind blew the voice out of my mouth. So I asked, sir, please, I want to see him. We were turned away. We saw the ferry rock bumping the land where we stood, moving, lifting, and dropping all the by water, getting smaller and smaller until we didn't know if we were really seeing it or one of the birds that looked black dipping up and down there. So we saw the ferry moving, and unfortunately, we could not get on board the ferry, and hence we could not see him. The only good thing was, of the other people who took the sweets and biscuits for him, he wrote and said he got them, but it wasn't a good letter. So the other people took the sweets and biscuits for him. So they, whatever they had wanted to give, they gave it to other people, and they in turn, gave it over there. So he wrote a letter after. Every month he's allowed to write one letter. So one letter he writes, and he says, he said that he got them. So he got these things, but it wasn't a good letter. Of course not. He was cross with me. I should have found out. I should have known about the permit. So he was very angry with me. So he said, "Name the potate, like you should have known all these things. You should have talked about the permit, and you should have been able to find the permit, and you should have been able to secure the permit." He was right. I bought the train tickets. I asked where to go for the ferry. I should have known about the permit. I have passed standard 8. There was an advice office to go to in town. The churches ran it. He wrote, but the farm is so far away from town. We on the farms don't know about these things. It was as he said, our ignorance is the way we are kept down. This ignorance must go. Underline that. Our ignorance is the way we are kept down. This ignorance must go. This sort of ignorance, this is what we do not know. This is what we people who are not really educated, we do not know. This is the ignorance of us poor farmers. Actually, what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to have gone to the church over there. And in the church, they've got this office where these forms are issued. And you can get a form like this. Everything else I could find out. I found out how to reach Cape Town. I found out how to search for the ferry. I found out the location of the ferry, but unfortunately, I did not have the permit to enter Robben Island. This was something that I did not know, and this is out of my ignorance. And this ignorance has to go. If this ignorance does not go, then we, as ignorant South Africans, we will always be under the rule of the whites. We took the train back and never went to the island. Never saw him in the 3 more years he was there. Not once. We couldn't find the money for the train. His father died, and I had to help his mother from my pay. For our people, the worry is always money. I wrote, when will we ever have money? Then he sent such a good letter. So till that time, he had not written a good letter. Now he writes a good letter. That's what I'm on the island for, far away from you. I'm here so that one day our people will have the things they need: land, food, the end of ignorance. There was something else. I could just read the word power. The prison had blacked out. All the letters were not just for me. The prison officer read them before I could. So you see, this is standard jail practice. When you write a letter from the jail, usually the prison guard will also read it. And those words that he feels are offensive, or those words he feels are not good, he would, black them so that others won't see it. So here also, certain words were blacked out, and he found that one particular word is power. So this is what we are in this jail for. We are, one day we will try to end ignorance. I mean, you all have ignorance. You ladies, you people, you poor people, you all have ignorance. What you need is land, you need food, and you need money, and also you need power. Your power has been blacked out. So this is what she understands from the letter. This is one letter that gave her courage that one day we South Africans will be free. That is over, and he was coming home after 5 years. After 5 years, now he's coming back home. That's what it seemed to me when I heard the 5 years was suddenly disappeared. Nothing. There was no whole year still to wait. I showed my or our little girl his photo again. That's your daddy. He's coming. You're going to see him. If there had been time, my father would have cut poles. My mother and I would have baked bricks, cut thatch, and built a house for him and me and the child. So if my father was here, he would have somehow built a separate house for us. He would have been so happy that his son is coming back. And all I had was a photo of him. So I showed this photo to my daughter. So this is what he said. Ignorance is the way we are kept down. Ignorance must go. For our people, the worry is always money. And this is what I am on the island for, far away from you. I'm here so that one day our people will have the things they need. Food, land, the end of ignorance. And so this person is going to come, and he's coming back after 5 years. We were not sure what day he would arrive. We had only heard on my radio his name and the names of others who were being released. We had only heard some names. We just had a small radio, and in that we heard that he's being released. Then at the Indian store, I noticed the newspaper, The Nation. So there is only one newspaper, and that newspaper is known as The Nation. Written by black people. On the front, a picture of a lot of people dancing and waving. I saw it once that it was at that ferry. Some people were being carried on other men's shoulders. I couldn't see which one was him. We were waiting. The ferry had brought him on the island, but we remembered Cape Town is a long way for us. So we understood that, a lot of people are being released. And we saw one person being carried, on the shoulder and things like that. So, I mean, most probably some men were being carried. That's the PowerPoint. Some men were being carried on other men's shoulders. I couldn't see which one was him. We were waiting. So we were just waiting for that person. But here, apparently, this is Nelson Mandela. So in the African National Congress, the people are now free, and they are all returning to their homeland. They're free from jail. That's all. They're still not free from the clutches of the white minorities. They are still under suppression. But we remembered Cape Town is a long way for us. And then he did come on a Saturday. No school. So I was working with my mother, hoeing and weeding around the pumpkins and mealies. My hair that I meant to keep nice, tied in an old dock. A combi came over the veld, and his comrades had brought him. This is a combi. This is a special van, which you must understand. It's by Volkswagen. Generally, it is now used as a camper. This is nowadays, of course, this has been replaced by Toyota and Toyota Hiaces. But most of the Gulf countries have this Toyota Hiace. But the Volkswagen Combi or this sort of combination, or this also known as the Volkswagen camper. This was one of the popular cars or vans used in Africa. This is also used as a taxi in Africa. So he arrived in a combi. That's what is written specifically here. So a combi came over the veldt, we know, the grassland, and his comrades had brought him. I wanted to run away and wash, but he stood there stretching his legs. So he reached. I wanted to, I wanted to go home and wash myself and clean myself, but by the time he had reached, and he got out of this combi, he started stretching his legs and calling, "Hey, hey!" See that he's so, his comrades are also very very powerful, and they're all part of this ANC. So that's sort of a slogan, "Hey, hey," with his comrades making a noise around him. And my mother started shrieking in the old style, "Ay, ay!" So you see, she's so happy that her son has come back. And my father was clapping and stamping towards him. He held his arms open to us, this big man in town, clothes, polished shoes, and all the time while he hugged me, as I was holding my dirty hands full of mud away from him behind his back. So I was trying to hold my hand away from him because my hands were full of mud and all that. But he just hugged me. His teeth hit me hard through his lips. So, the American kiss. So he pushed a kiss to her, and he grabbed at my mother, and she struggled to hold the child up to him. I thought we would all fall down. Then everything was quiet. The child hid behind my mother. So the child was, very scared of this. Suddenly, this one man is coming out, and suddenly the man is hugging the mother, kissing her mother, then hugging his mother, and all those things. She struggled. Then everything was quiet. The child hid behind my mother. He picked her up, but she turned her head away to her shoulder. But she just turned her head. He spoke to her gently, but she wouldn't speak to him. She's nearly 6 years old. I told her not to be a baby. She said, "That's not him." The comrades all laughed. We laughed. She ran off, and he said, "She has to have time to get used to me. So don't worry. She's a child. She has not seen me so far. So it's okay. She will get used to me soon. Being a child, naturally, it will take time." So we will stop here.